Hi folks, so in this video we're going to look at the types of practice. This is really structured for the A-level PE OCR exam board and is a part of the skill acquisition and sports psychology unit, almost paper 2 as people would call it. As always, I've tried to maximise the amount that I have taken information from exam mark schemes so that we can hopefully get the best possible chance of getting marks on our A-level exams. Any comments and subscribe as always. So we're going to look at these 4 practice types, not to be confused with practice methods, which I'll do in my next video. So we're looking at the part, whole, whole part, whole, and progressive part. And I've kept this video nice and succinct, nice and easy. But again, this is one of those topics that you have to learn. You need to know these practice types off by heart. You need to know almost the advantages and disadvantages, skill classifications that would therefore be useful. And so if you're sat here now and you're thinking, what does she mean by skill classifications? You really need to go back and watch that previous video that we talked about in the last upload. So getting straight into it, part practice. So we need to understand the word subroutines. Now, a lot of people would say this is part of a skill, okay, but we can't use the word part to describe the key term part. Like, that's not going to get you any marks at all. So a subroutine is a section. So if we think about this example, which is practicing the tennis serve by doing the ball toss or the toss at first, then we're looking at the fact that the tennis serve is broken down into lots of different subroutines, sections or parts. So I'll say again, so practicing splitting or breaking down the skill into subroutines. Another good example would be looking at freestyle or front crawl within swimming and just practicing either the arm pulls or the leg kicks. Okay, so when you take a skill and break it down and just practice those small subroutines, a subroutine part practice. Secondly, the opposite of that, we've got whole practice. Again, you cannot define the word whole practice. This is when you practice a skill as a whole, because you're going to pick up no marks. So what is the way that we need to say it? This is when we practice doing the total or complete or the entirety of the movement. And the opposite of that would be not breaking it down into subroutines or parts. Okay, so in this example, and if we keep the same skill throughout, performing a tennis serve in its entirety. Thirdly, we have the whole part whole. Okay, so we just need to break down what we now understand of those key terms. So practicing the complete skill, then splitting it up into subroutines. And the most important thing that people forget to do, and this is where people lose marks, then practicing the complete skill again. So when you're defining it, you need to make sure you've got whole part whole, and your example needs to follow that same methodology. So practicing the tennis serve completely, then start to concentrate on the toss up, then integrate back into the complete skill again. Lastly, we have progressive part. Now, this is what we do with serial skills, really. And again, if you don't understand that term, please go back and watch the skill classification video. So skills that are broken down into subroutines and then are linked or chained together. Really important that we get that keyword of linked or chained. So let's take the triple jump that we know that is broken down into the hop, step, jump. What's suggesting here is that you would practice the hop, you would practice that subroutine, then you would add the step, practice the step, and then we're linking or chaining those two together. Then you'd practice the hop, step together. You then might practice the jump, and then finally you would go hop, step, jump. So we're almost adding on, think of chains being linked on together. We're practicing and adding them on every time. But again, really important that we use those keywords of subroutines and linked or chained. Finally, I've put this all onto one slide just to make it much easier for you to create flashcards or whatever your revision method of choice is. We'll look at the advantages of different practice types or practice methods, okay? So the part, whole, the whole part, whole, and the progressive part. Now, I've not done a separate slide on disadvantages because what we would need to do here is use our intelligence and just flip this, because ultimately we need to be able to apply knowledge. We can't just rote learn everything, and this is where higher candidates do better. So let's say in the first practice type of part, if we look for part being good for skills in low organization, which is the third one down, well, a disadvantage of part is that you can't really use high organization skills because it's difficult to break down. So I don't feel the need to run through all of these. So let's just pick out a few from each one, but it is important that you write these down in your revision flashcards or your notes. So part practice allows for a performer to gain confidence, reduces the possibility of information overload, and then jump down is useful for complex or dangerous skills. If we think about snowboarding or skiing, or we think about swimming, that could be highly dangerous. You don't want to do whole, you just want to be like, oh, off you go, have a go at it. Try the entirety of a swimming stroke if you have no idea how to swim. That's going to be super, super dangerous. So when you're new to swimming and you're a cognitive or you're a beginner learner, you would often get floats down out in order to isolate a subroutine just to practice it. Whole practice then allows for the performer to experience a true feel for the movement. And this is something now we want to call kinesthesis, when you really understand the feel of the movement. Increases fluency, timing of the skill, and then different skill classifications. Whole part whole, because we've got that part element in the middle, second one down, we've got to have a serial skill or a skill in low organization similar to part, because we need to be able to break it down in the first place in order to put that part bit in the middle. Progressive part allows the performer to learn links and between different subroutines, great for serial skills, and then again, similar to part, reduces the possibility of information overload, giving somebody too much information that they simply can't digest. Those do now tasks, as always, rewatch this video, write down those key practice terms and the definitions, create your flashcards or whatever it is that you would like to use as your revision technique. Get tested on them. Whoever lives at home, whoever you hang around with on your study or free time, get tested. Make sure you understand and make sure you know that you know these. Find past paper questions as always, and subscribe for more help for future videos coming up soon. See you later. Bye.